Okay, I titled this The Practice of Compassion. Uh, and well, you'll see it that compassion and mercy really are the same. But I never realized that there is so much attention paid to compassion, not just like Bible study or churches or anything, all over. Um, and so it's kind of interesting. And it's interesting. And there was so much. I'm going to kind of squash it all together a little bit tonight, but there is so much to do with this. So, um, okay, I left this in here just as a reminder. Okay, because who was Jesus talking to? And basically, all right, he was talking to, oh, okay, number one, there were people in the crowd who were practicing the Beatitudes. And so he was like encouraging them and when telling them that they would be blessed. So there were some people, and that's part of whom he was talking to. But of course, there were the doubters who really had just lost their faith in God based on the woes of the world at the time. Remember, they were under Roman occupation and had many financial burdens, taxes, and whatnot. And so they had lost their faith in God. And um, and then there were others who were just resented the fact that they had been defeated by the Romans and they were there and they had lots of hatred and resentment towards the foreign rule. And of course, throughout the Gospels, when you read them, you see where, okay, the Pharisees and the scribes were challenging Jesus at every turn. Okay. And okay, so even when Jesus was talking to these people, Sermon on the Mount, the Pharisees and the scribes, uh, they didn't hear any of this because because most of what Jesus said about love and compassion and meekness and all of that um, challenged their doctrines. And so anyway, we just have to keep that in mind. All right. So the first scripture, very simple but complicated.
Blessed are the merciful, for they shall have mercy.
Okay. Um, there's two parts to this, and so we're gonna look at what mercy really is and how it's defined from the Aramaic. But once again, we know that Jesus taught from the Torah, and pretty much you will find what Jesus taught and what we call the Old Testament. And so Psalm 41, 1 through 3.
Blessed is he who looks after the poor. The Lord will deliver him in time of trouble. The Lord will preserve him and keep him alive, and he shall bless him upon the earth. He will not deliver him into the hands of his enemies. The Lord will strengthen him upon his sick bed. He will wholly recover from his illness.
Okay. And the interesting thing, and maybe I emphasize this too much, but the interesting thing is Jesus taught from the Torah. Jesus knew this psalm and was trying to get to the spirit of the law, and he was trying to tell these people, the Jewish people at the time, who had learned all of this because the Torah, that was their main source, and the Psalms, they knew this. I mean, they read this, um, and that's what they knew. And of course, that's what Jesus came to do, to establish the spirit of the law. Because even though this psalm was back, thousands of years before, even though that psalm was there, the Jewish doctrines, the Jewish authorities, they had kind of forgotten about it. And once again, I will say, every time you read these things and you read the Gospels, whatever, it is so much like our world today. And so, and the other thing is it's the spirit. We're looking at the spirit of things. Mercy is part of the spiritual thing, but they didn't have it back when Jesus was teaching it, and it was limited. Okay, and it is the same way today. It's limited. There are merciful acts going on out there, and I'd like to think more so that there were more merciful acts than not. Okay. So we're going to just take this. Blessed are the merciful. And we'll go to our definitions. Okay. And these are straight from, dictionaries, Google, whatever. So mercy is compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish or harm. Okay, now this definition, of course, comes pretty much is what happens in courts, in our courts. Okay, and it focuses on toward someone who is within one's power to punish or harm. Well, that's a our world kind of thing. All right, but mercy involves an inner feeling of pity or compassion for someone suffering, leading to outward actions of kindness, clemency, or benevolence. Okay. Now, but here's the thing: when you get to Aramaic, there is a word in Aramaic, and it's Murahmana or Murahmane. All right. And it refers to the merciful, the compassionate, but it comes from the Semitic root, which means to love, delight in, to be kind or friendly. So although the Beatitude says, blessed are the merciful, we're going to say, blessed are the compassionate. And the compassionate were those who performed deeds of mercy, of course. And they called this, okay, people to people, practical compassion. Now, there's a whole mercy from God, that is, the biblical thing. God have mercy on me, and that's okay. But what we're talking about here is compassion, all right, for our brothers and sisters in this world. And so compassion is defined as sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. The meaning of compassion is sympathetic consciousness of others' distress, together with a desire to alleviate it. Now, all right, let's just go back a little bit here. And I put there the desire to alleviate it, but you will find it's kind of like forgiveness. Compassion, you do not necessarily have to be in contact with a person for whom you have compassion. Okay, sometimes, depending on what the relationships are and whatnot, you would act to have the desire to alleviate it. You would act, but you do not have to have contact in order to show compassion for others. And again, it's kind of like forgiveness. You're showing compassion for others benefits you. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, Jesus, of course, compassion is the heart and core of Jesus' ministry. Now, and when I say that, okay, when I talk about compassion, you automatically have to include the idea of love. Okay, it's all combined. So love, yes, but compassion too is at the heart and core of Jesus' ministries. His compassion, all right, and his attention was basically toward the poor and the outcasts. And when Jesus did his healings, that was an outpouring of Jesus' compassion. And I didn't put scriptures in. Well, I do have one scripture we're going to read. And because Jesus told parables. Okay. And that's another way that he demonstrated what compassion was all about. So I thought we would review one of the main parables that Jesus told about compassion, although sometimes when you're reading it, it doesn't come out like that. But what it is the Good Samaritan. So I thought we would just read this again. It'll just refresh ourselves as to what the parable of the Good Samaritan is. Okay, go ahead, George.
Jesus said to him, "There was a man who went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and bandits attacked him and robbed him and beat him and left him with little life remaining in him. And they went away. And it chanced a priest was going down that road, and he saw him and passed on. And I likewise, a Levite, came and arrived at that place and saw him and passed on.
Mm.
But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came from where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. And he came to him and bound up his wounds and poured on them wine and oil. And he put him on his own ass and brought him to the inn and took care of him. And in the morning he took out 2 pennies and gave them to the innkeeper
Yeah.
and said to him, "Take care of him, and whatever you spend more, when I return, I will give it to you."
So the compassion here was by the Samaritan. The Samaritan had compassion. Now, there's so much we can't really discuss, but I want to talk about this a little bit. Okay, the priest and the Levite lacked compassion because they put the law over compassion. In other words, and it's all throughout the Gospels, the Pharisees and the scribes, in this case, the Levites or priests and whatnot, are all absorbed with the law. Okay. And there was no room as far as they were concerned. And I'm sorry to say, I think in most cases, as far as we're concerned today, there's no room for compassion in the law. And I guess maybe I shouldn't say there's plenty of room if we wanted to use compassion. Compassion doesn't erase a law. Compassion just says, okay, we'll enforce the law, but we'll do it with compassion, with love and compassion. And it can be done, but so that's what we're talking about here. The Samaritans were not caught up in the law. They had some of the very same things. They used the Torah, but they had whatever. I don't know if they had written doctrines or whatever, but they were compassionate. So that's a little thing about the law and compassion, and it's a good subject for nowadays because we certainly
My,
can
under,
use.
my understanding is that the law was that the Levite and the Samaritan could not touch him, or it would make them unclean.
Yeah,
According
right. The Levite and the priest, the same way. Yeah, they couldn't
to
touch him, partly because of the blood and partly because they didn't know if he was dead. But yeah, that was part of the law that said, um, yeah. But see, that just shows you, you know, the law, somewhere along the way, they lost the idea, and we saw it in the Psalms. They lost the part about compassion and they focused on the law. No compassion whatsoever. Anyway, okay, I thought it'd be good to review that because that's a pretty good example of compassion. And then of course we could get into more, but we can't here. Okay. Now this I just didn't realize this conjured up lots of stuff too. Because what it's saying is that those who show mercy, they will have mercy. In other words, compassion will be shown to them, and as they have shown compassion, and compassion will be shown to them. Again, these topics, man, we could go whatever. So I'm just touching lightly on them. And so we get to see, we're talking about the give compassion, and compassion is returned to you. And so we go to something called the law of compensation, but mainly Luke 6:38.
Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, shaken down and running over, they will pour into your robe. For with the measure that you measure, it will be measured to you.
Okay, there's a lot there's a lot here, but for clarification, when it says good measure shaken down, they will pour into your robe. Okay, just a little note on this. Culturally, as the distance between homes is short and bags are scarce, the borrower or buyer of the wheat holds the end of his robe with both hands, and the wheat is poured into it. Generally, Near Easterners wear long flowing robes that are often used for carrying foodstuffs such as fruit, vegetables, and so forth. This was a general practice in most countries of the Near East, was followed by men and women. Just to clarify that, but for with the measure that you measure, it will be measured to you, and give, and it will be given to you. Now, much of these next 2 or 3 slides is Dr. Lomsa. The principle of giving and receiving is inherent in nature. The wise creator set this pattern for all life to function in harmony. When this principle is broken, all life is disturbed. Interesting. Now, all right. And this is this is common Near Eastern writing here again. It's very metaphoric. So, but let's listen to it. Okay, the universe functions by the law of giving and receiving. The oceans, seas, rivers, and brooks give water to the air to be purified by the sun and then poured out upon the earth to return to the seas again. This law is from everlasting to everlasting. Nature has never violated it. The seas have never held to their waters. The brooks have never closed their mouths. The clouds have never stored water for more than a few days or weeks. God's order never fails. So again, just a great example of Near Eastern symbolic writing. And so here's some more. What is true of nature is also true of man. And man, these are great lessons here. We all live in the same universe, under the same universal law. And whenever we try to violate this law, we find ourselves in trouble. Easterners believe in mercy, and they extend hospitality to their neighbors, to strangers, and even to their enemies. They say, today we have plenty, but no one knows what tomorrow has in store for us. The same hand that renders help to others today may be stretched out, asking for help tomorrow. In this world, no one lives to himself, and no one can claim independence of others. A very significant thought. Just as the leaves and roots of a tree depend on one another, so men need each other. Interesting. Now, I have 3 scriptures here, and this is one of the main things that Jesus emphasized, and as you can see, the prophets emphasized too. So go ahead, George.
Go and learn what this means. I want mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to invite righteous men, but sinners. He has showed you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, that you shall do justice and love mercy and be ready to walk after the Lord your God. For I desired mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings.
Okay. We'll just briefly talk about this a little bit. this, this is, man, this is it. This is at the heart of what Jesus taught, and what for whatever reason, once again, it is not, it has not been emphasized over sacrifice. Now, the Jews don't have burnt offerings anymore, okay, because they don't have a temple and they don't do that. But the Catholics, the Christians, whatever, remember, it's all about Jesus and the sacrifice he made and whatnot. And it's so, I don't want to say negative things or whatnot, but this, the whole idea of showing mercy and compassion to each other, it just, I mean, we saw it in the Psalms. That's clearly was pointed out, that what we should do, what they should do. And again, it's one of those things that is just kind of slipped away, even though it's still in the scriptures. And I don't know, but I wanted to make sure I put these verses in here when we're talking about mercy. And okay, and because we were talking about this idea of if you show mercy, it will return to you. Most people, even Christians, have a problem with that. And because of the suffering, we're supposed to, well, I've heard it said, we're supposed to suffer for Jesus. So anyway, I'm gonna let that go, but I had to put that in there because it's so important when you're talking about mercy and the law. Essentially, burnt offerings and whatnot were part of the law. So okay, and I had hoped to go into a good bit more, but I'm telling you, there is so much. I don't understand why there's not a whole bunch more compassion in the world, because you can go on, I'll give you a couple of references, and it'll tell you how you can set yourself up to be compassionate, everything. So, but let's to be compassionate, practice empathy by trying to understand another person's feelings and situation. Then act with kindness and care through actions like active listening, encouraging words, and offering help. You can also cultivate compassion by practicing self-compassion, which involves being kind to yourself, accepting your own mistakes, and treating yourself with the same care you'd offer a friend. And so that's, I was amazed at how much there is. And if you want to learn to be compassionate, there's a ton of stuff out there. And of course, it all comes down to the golden rule, love your neighbor as yourself, whatever. It's really what it all comes down to. But this specific compassion, if you want to learn and about it and learn how to do it, it's out there. Okay, and so I put, all right, a few years ago, I had somebody had well, it was a minister friend from over our Aramaic meetings, brought this to my attention. And it is the Charter for Compassion. And it has it's an excellent website promoting compassion, and lots of lots of self help things, lots of learning. And I wish I could talk about it more, but anyway, check it out. There's lots of stuff there. It's a whole organization. I mean, and it's nonprofit, so there's not there's not money involved unless you want to donate and stuff. So, okay, so that's out there. And then the other thing that I found is, compassion and is at the heart of the Buddhist teachings. And so you will find on YouTube many meditations that will help you with, okay, self-compassion. It'll help you to learn how to have compassion for others and very specifics, how to have compassion with those that you hate. So this whole topic I never realized until I started digging into it was so it is so complex. Well, it's really simple, but there's so much out there on it. So we should, with all that stuff out there, we should have more compassion in this world. Okay. All right. Thank you for your contributions. They are greatly appreciated. And once again, Dr. Lance's book, The Kingdom of Heaven on Earth, it's a great reading. I don't care how many times you read it. This is not a book that you read once through and say, "Oh, I read that." You can read it 50 times, and each time you will get something new out of it. Okay, so I'm open to whatever you might have to say about compassion, maybe how you have showed it or how you see others. And I always can't think of these questions, but and maybe examples of how we show, or maybe you've seen some compassion shown lately. And of course, the other thing that goes with this, we didn't talk about, is you really should not expect anything in return. Jesus said, if you show mercy, you will have mercy in return. But of course, that's not the reason you do it. You really shouldn't have expectations.